So it's 339 days until Dragon Con?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking about cosplay ideas. I'm thinking fascist scientist myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think you could be able to get away with that at Dragon Con?
Give it the old college try.
Okay. So
I'm going to do the United Colors of Benetton.
Okay.
All right.
So is that going to be sort of like?
It's a unit. It's a unit costume, but with a lot of different colors.
Oh,
Like a
cool.
rainbow pattern.
Cool. So you'd be Sergeant Benetton
Yes.
rather than Sergeant Benton.
Yeah.
Ah, nice. I'm going to wear a blue scarf around my head.
Wait, what does that even mean? No one's going to get that, man.
No, they will get it.
No.
They will get it.
No one even likes Sarah Jane Smith.
You shut your mouth.
But there's nothing that could do that. Dynastream's indestructible.
I think the Brigadier has an idea, eh, Alistair?
Welcome back to another episode of Who's the Doctor Talking Outside the Box. You know me from last time. My name is Michael Faulkner.
I'm Gary Mitchell.
And I'm Michael French. That's MGM. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Although we're not bankrupt yet.
we're not. We're not. We hope to be the opposite of bankrupt.
Yes.
Today we're talking about Robot, the first serial of season 12. It was 4 25-minute episodes. Aired from December 28th, 1974 to January 18, 1975. Written by Terrence Dix, directed by Christopher Barry, and produced by Barry Letts.
So it was right at the tail end of 1974.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this was the first Tom Baker. The first time we get to see the chemistry of him and Elizabeth Sladen.
Right.
And with mileage varying depending on who you are, it's also the first Harry Sullivan.
Not fit. I'm the doctor.
No, Doctor. I'm the doctor, and I say that you're not fit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Harry.
Could you oblige?
And it was also, I think, the first time that the new script editor, Robert Holmes, had been on board. He had been with Doctor Who for quite a while. I think it was since the Crotons was his first script that he wrote.
Right.
And he was unofficially the script editor for the last little bit of Pertwee's run.
Right.
But this was the first time he's officially credited as the script editor.
And we get 10 seconds of Pertwee before the...
Yeah, and the unique thing there, and I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit too, is that they filmed Planet of the Spiders and Robot simultaneously. So there were actually two active doctors at the same time, and you know, Elizabeth Sladen and the rest of the crew were bouncing back and forth, running themselves ragged, trying to keep up with both productions going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is probably why we get quite a few scenes of the Doctor and Harry without anybody else.
Curiouser and curiouser.
You know, you were just mentioning, Pertwee being on set because they were filming those two simultaneously, and not to constantly reference Elizabeth Sladen's autobiography, but I've read it 3 times because I'm broken. I read the anecdote about that from her because she was having to, act double duty between those two different stories. And she talked about how during the regeneration sequence, it was very nondescript because John kind of laid down on the ground and they had locked the camera and he did his shot, and Tom, who had been working on other parts of Robot the whole time, had not been seen on the set of Planet of the Spiders. So he was just there. They knew he was the new doctor. He and John didn't introduce himself to him. And John Pertwee was known for being very alpha when it came to introducing himself to actors who were in the stories, being, the guy who would say, I'm John Pertwee, he was very formal with everybody up until this point. And then he did not talk to Tom Baker. He didn't, even though Tom was just the successor, Tom didn't kick him out of his job. John Pertwee left of his own accord. She said it was very surreal. Like there was obviously no rapport, but there was also this kind of just silence about the whole thing. It's very weird.
Well, before we get too far, Gary, do you mind giving us a quick synopsis of Robot?
All right, so the quick synopsis of Robot is in 1968, there was a show called Doctor Who.
Okay,
I'm going to go. You want me to start from the beginning, right? No.
In the beginning, there was silence.
Yes. Let's go all the way back. So as the Planet of the Spiders has come to the end, Doctor took the fatal amount of radiation, regenerates with a kickstart thanks to the monk, which when we get to that serial, we'll get into that.
Well, there's no time like the present, is there?
the Doctor changes, and at least this time the Brigadier is there to see it, so we don't have to go through the whole, what do you mean you're the Doctor? You can't be the Doctor. The other guy's the Doctor.
Right.
You know, and I love his deadpan, oh, here it is again.
Well, here we go again.
And while the Doctor is cooking and baking into his new form, something is breaking into these military bases. It steals plans. Then they steal parts that are needed, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And what's going on is this scientist built this giant robot. Thus, the title of our episode.
So it's not just a clever title; it's a literal title.
It's a literal title.
It's about a robot.
It's very impressive. But what's it for?
And
it's not surreal or metaphorical. It's a literal robot.
Right. And the quick through line is, trying to figure out who built this robot, why is it stealing all this stuff? It's killed a few military guys, then it steals something from this high British cabinet minister, and it turns out this crazy group of rogue fascist-ish.
Well, we're covering a number of fringe organizations, and I'm sure we'll find a place for you. Somewhere between the flying saucer people and the flat earthers.
Science guys who think that only the scientific genius elite should lead the world because, all you people are morons and are screwing it up, are using this robot to steal everything they need to get these nuclear codes from everybody, America, China, Russia, which Britain was safekeeping because, as one of the great lines, because everyone else are foreigners.
Well, naturally enough, the only country that would be trusted with such a role was Great Britain.
Well, naturally. I mean, the rest were all foreigners.
Well, exactly.
And they're going to hold the world hostage. And so it's a mystery of what's going on, why is it going on, and then stopping. A lot of the stuff we're talking about is decades old, so we're not going to try to do any huge spoilers, but
The statute of limitations for spoilers is kind of expired for something that was made in 1974.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the Doctor regenerates into actor Tom Baker. Did you not know that? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I ruined that for you. We watched this on the UK Blu-ray, the UK limited edition Blu-ray, which you can get
which is
in
why
the,
it's got that 12.
Yes, with the 12 rating, which you can get that in the United States with a more standard case. We also will be eating jelly babies throughout this this vidcast. So, what did you guys think of the quality of the? Because this was done by the Doctor Who restoration team, which are fans of the show. They are sort of hired by the BBC.
Yeah, having gone from the Timestamps project and having watched basically on kind of a DVD type quality to this Blu-ray, I was really impressed with how it looked. I mean, there's a lot of touch up that goes on in there without any. I know we had talked about that they had done some other digital effects and stuff trying to shore up like the Sontaran experiment and stuff, but. This one looked good without mucking around too much with the effects, just letting it stand on its own. I mean, we did talk quite a bit about the final battle with the robot, and when he's shrinking back down again, we're like, oh, come on, really? This whole battle looks pretty dodgy.
Yeah.
And they could have done a Star Trek thing on it, and really shored everything up with the digital effects, and they chose not to.
They could have Lucased it.
Yeah, they
Right.
or they could have gone to the extreme with done a special edition.
Right.
And they chose not to. They chose to let it stand on its own, which I thought was impressive.
Yeah. And the picture quality is amazing. It's clear, it's crisp. It looks like it was filmed with modern equipment.
Right.
It's only the effects, which even for 1974, some of them are a little dodgy.
Yeah.
Like that tank.
Right.
We have to talk about that tank.
We got to talk about that tank.
Oh, the tank.
But a lot of it, I mean, it's a decent robot suit.
Yeah.
It looks really cool. I mean, it's your standard body stocking with stuff bolted onto it, but it looks good.
Yeah, yeah, and it also achieves a towering height, which is also helpful in giving it that sense of threat.
It's a lovely restoration. They really did a fantastic job.
And there's a lot of things that stand out that you don't see on the DVD version, which. And this happens with everything that gets up converted. You're like, oh, okay, there's a mistake there. But I think this actually adds a bit of something more to it, because you realize that Doctor Who has always been done on this shoestring budget. As Gary pointed out earlier today, it's like $15 on a ham sandwich. And it does kind of show up here. You can see. The strings or the effects or whatever else, or the ham sandwich in one case.
Yes.
But it adds a certain charm because the thing about these classic Who episodes is that they pulled off so much. They told such
Right.
great stories
Right.
with those limitations in place.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason a lot of Doctor Who still holds up today is they didn't have a budget, so they had to rely on story.
Yeah.
Well, there you are.
And they knew if the story was strong enough, it'll surpass the effects. And it's easier to look past horrible effects if there's a decent story.
I'm sorry, it wasn't my idea.
And this one, let's getting into it. It's a good story.
Right. It's speaking of story, I guess since we're about to, delve right into this plot, I think it's important to note that this plot was written by the outgoing showrunning team. So this was a Terrence Dicks script. They wrote it in anticipation of the transition from Pertwee to Philip Hinchcliffe, his group, because that's from Pertwee to Baker. You've got Unit in here. You've got the Monster of the Week, and then you've got this brand new Doctor. You've got Bessie.
Yes.
So it's almost like a Pertwee Doctor Who without Pertwee.
Yeah, it's a send-off of the Pertwee unit era.
Yeah.
Because after here, he goes into space.
Yeah,
Right.
This is the last time you'll see Bessie until the 7th Doctor's era. This is the last time you'll see the Brigadier in a regular role. He'll be back a couple times for guest spots. This is really kind of okay, we're done here,
Right.
And instead of just cutting it and running, it gives a kind of a wrap up because let's tie off all the loose threads and take part of that team forward with Sarah Jane. And go off into space and get back to traveling, which is what Doctor Who should should be doing.
Right.
Yeah, because I love the Baker era, and we'll get into this when we do a season of the Baker era. But I as much as I love that Baker era, and the Bond super science Doctor Who.
Oh, you mean the Pertwee era?
Did I say? I say?
You said Baker. Yeah.
Yeah, I meant Pertwee.
Pertwee.
Okay, I meant Pertwee. I do this all the time. Sorry.
Go away.
But the thing I love about, and as much as I love that, Monster Hunters, science adventure, James Bond, Who, I like it much better when he's not stuck on Earth the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. I like the travels in the TARDIS.
What are you two up to now, eh?
We're just going on a little trip.
As I've been revisiting the Pertwee stuff, it is frustrating that he's so earthbound. From my perspective, I know a lot of people love that.
Oh, yeah.
I like him as a Doctor, but his earthboundness kind of gives me cabin fever after a while.
Yeah, because
But it also gives him fever. But again, that's
Yeah.
because part of Doctor Who is the exploration, the going out and saving people who are in trouble, but not necessarily doing it here. And
Right.
part of Pertwee's era, one of the drawbacks I thought was that while they were fun and exciting episodes and stories, he's stuck here. Well, that conflict, there is no drama. The conflict there is Pertwee's Doctor doesn't want to be there.
Right.
And the Time Lords have all said, no, we took your keys away, you're stuck. And so he has no choice but to follow his base instinct, which is to help and save people.
Right.
While at the same time trying to resolve this, I'm stuck, I want to get out of here. Let me try to, short the or hot wire the TARDIS and get out of here without my keys. What were your thoughts on the regeneration?
Look, I think it's starting.
it's quick.
Yeah.
When we were watching it, I think we made the comment, not only is the regeneration fast, but the Fourth Doctor's recovery is rather fast. In Spearhead in Space, when it went from Troughton to Pertwee, there was the dramatic, fall from the cosmos onto Earth, and then he's in a hospital and trying to recover over several days. We know how David Tennant's transition from Eccleston was in the Christmas special. It took a long time.
Just needed a spot of tea.
Yeah, we don't even have to get into Colin Baker's transition from Davison. I mean, that was traumatic. Went on for quite a while as he tried to murder his own friends. It was relatively quick. That was the one thing I noticed watching Robot this time around. Yeah.
It's like the second fastest. The only one faster is the sneezed regeneration between Smith and Capaldi, where it's
Right.
Yeah, pretty instant.
Right.
And the regeneration with Hartnell to Troughton was actually pretty quick too. And there was not a lot of trauma there. This continues the now established tradition of kind of the trauma that comes with this change and the baking, as we called it, not quite fully baked Doctor in the first episode, whereas Troughton was okay a little bit and then okay he's in, because it was just a normal fact of life at that point. Oh yeah, I get old, I regenerate, I move on.
So are we saying that a guy with the last name of Baker was only half baked when he came into play?
Oh.
I'm just speculating here. I'm just spitballing.
I tell you, Brigadier, there's nothing to worry about. The Brontosaurus is large and placid.
This is also only the third time it had happened, too. They were still figuring out a lot of the rules of regeneration at this point.
Yeah,
because there was at the end of Planet of the Spiders, is a whole, he might not regenerate.
Right.
Which is why we have the monk guy who goes, no, there you go.
Right.
Which does happen a few other times.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when Tom Baker exits the show, he gets help from some strange entity that comes walking in.
Yeah, I think it's only explained in the books. It's not really explained on screen at all as to what that entity is.
Right.
Or the change from the Eighth Doctor to the War Doctor with the people on what was that planet?
The Sisters of Karn. Yeah, and this is the second time in a row that we've seen a regeneration in as we go linearly through the show. That's had a little bit of a boost from somebody else as we're talking about, because the Time Lords also pushed Troughton into Pertwee.
Right.
Yeah, that was a involuntary regeneration.
That was a forced one.
Now, interesting trivia, because what you're going to find out is I'm probably, throughout these eras, I'm probably going to be throwing around a lot of Sarah Jane Smith trivia just because I can. Why not? She was present for the regeneration of the third into the fourth. Mm-hmm. Nathan Turner wanted her to be present for the fourth to the fifth regeneration. He wanted her there for the last season of Tom Baker into the first season of Peter Davison to help ease the transition out of one of the most popular doctors of all time. Mm-hmm. And she politely turned it down because she said, I don't know if we can recapture that chemistry. It's a big risk. I don't know. He's in a different place now. I'm in a different place. So it's interesting that they had a companion that was in Pertwee's last season that then carried over into Tom Baker's first and second. And then they wanted that same companion to be in his last season to carry over into Davidson's first season. It's a whole leapfrogging thing.
But we're probably going to do a whole show just on regenerations alone.
More than likely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny we actually talk about with respect to this episode and like the regeneration limits and everything else. It's actually Robert Holmes, who was the script editor here, who later on builds that mythology piece. He's the one that establishes the 12 and 13 limits.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which seemed like, when I was a kid, we'll never get to the 13th, Doctor.
Right. Yeah, sometimes when they set those limits, they don't anticipate how popular a property can be. Mm-hmm. I talked about this a little bit when we talked about Voltron. It wasn't the same kind of thing, but they set with the vehicle Voltron, they set the 5-minute power limit, and then they realized, wow, that was a dumb idea because we want big battles with the guy, so they just quietly stopped referring to the 5-minute power limit. Same thing with this. I think they were getting up to a point where they were like, oh, we're really going to go past 12 doctors. This was a bad rule.
Yeah, well, and especially considering that most shows in this, starting in 1963, with most shows like this, if you get 3 years, you're good. You've been a huge success.
Right.
And so when they say we're now 12 years in, and I think this limit was established either in the 12th or 13th year. Don't quote me on that one.
Right.
We have this limit that's hard and fast. Well, it'd been 3 years per doctor. You're looking at 36 or 39 years of constant production before you're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
What TV show is going to be on the air that long?
No one expected that.
No, you're right. And there was a large hiatus for the show. There was a large dry spell. So, but I think my biggest regret about Robot, and I don't disagree with the choice they made because they had to shake up the show and get it back to its roots of time travel. But my biggest regret of the show watching it is knowing that by and large, this is the end of the whole dynamic with Unit and the Brigadier.
Yes.
This is kind of the last song of that. I mean, I know we had Android Invasion, and I know we had, I believe he showed up in Terror of the Zygons, but beyond those cameos, this is kind of it.
Yeah. There's a few spots here and there where they bring him back, like Battlefield and the Seventh Doctor.
Right.
But yeah, it's the end of the Unit era, which is a great era of Doctor Who.
Right.
And they do a really touching send off in Robot to deal with this. They had that momentary sit down where it's like, we usually were kind of at each other, but
right.
It's still a good time kind of thing.
Yeah.
They touch on it in the very manly tradition the proper brigadier general could.
Right. Right.
There's no hugs, no crying or anything. It's just like, good show, chap, good show.
This was also I can't remember if it was you or Gary that made the comment in the middle of or towards the beginning of the show, actually, when we were watching it. It was the first episode of the story. how it seems like Sarah Jane's journalism thing has come back around hardcore for this one. Like, it was big in Time Warrior, and then she went off on a bunch of adventures with the Doctor and kind of it didn't get played up as much. And now with the first Baker appearance, suddenly I'm Sarah Jane Smith and I'm a journalist again because I have to infiltrate this base. And meanwhile, the Doctor is just trying to keep Harry Sullivan away from him.
Yeah.
Mother, I feel sick. Send for the doctor. Quick, quick, quick.
This is really kind of a Doctor light episode.
Yeah.
Right. The Doctor's not doing a whole lot. He
Right.
has some quick costume changes as he's forming up who he is.
Is something wrong?
He does a little bit of investigating with the dandelion. He pokes and prods a little bit. He's piecing things together in the background. But this is really a unit Sarah Jane Smith,
Right.
And to a degree Harry Sullivan adventure.
That was in the other one.
Really there, I think.
And I think that's probably a good call, given that we've had a lot of Earthbound stuff with Pertwee, and now we've got this new guy we're trying to push into the space realm again, and we don't know how the dynamic's going to work yet. So let them shine for the farewell and for this new Sarah Jane Doctor dynamic that's building, and then we're on our way to a different adventure.
It's the companions who carry you over that bridge between Doctors. It's like, we love the Doctor. The Doctor is, it's his show. It's his name in the title. But the companions are always a big chunk of why the show is popular.
And someone brought it up online. I read a quote somewhere a few days ago that said that the Doctor has companions, but the Doctor is the Brigadier's companion.
Yeah.
Is that the case, do you think? I mean, in this sense, like that the Doctor was more of the Brigadier's employee than the Brigadier was the Doctor's?
It was more of a partnership.
It was a very reluctant partnership, and a lot of it, like they helped each other out quite a bit in the Pertwee era, because like we said, the Pertwee's Doctor didn't want to be there,
right?
And he had to be kind of cajoled into while you're here, you've got to help us out with these threats. But at the same time, the Brigadier had only known the second Doctor, and he was very shocked when the third Doctor showed up and it was a different face. And now he's got to learn all about what does it mean to have a Time Lord my employee,
right?
And what does that mean not only for my organization but for the world at large,
right?
When threats come knocking, what can I expect from this new guy?
And while they were definitely friendly, being British, I wouldn't go as far to say they were chums.
Right.
But there was a friendly, but there were times where they when they butted heads. But in the end, I think they had a mutual respect more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of is why that is, because he doesn't, like you said, he doesn't feel like a traditional companion. But then again, up until Pertwee, up until Sarah Jane, the main role of the companion was to get captured or to stand there and go, "What's that?" so the Doctor can
explain.
Spout off.
Right, exactly.
And that's why Joe quit.
For he's a jolly good fellow, for they are jolly good fellows.
And we'll see it again in the Fourth Doctor's era with Romana. The first Romana, her part of her deal with being on Doctor Who was, I don't want to be a damsel in distress. I want to be part of the show. I want to be part of the moving the plot along.
I'm a Time Lord.
I'm a Time Lord. Let me do a Time Lord thing. And within a couple episodes, she was back to being a damsel in distress.
Right. She said there was nowhere for this character to go.
Yeah. And so I'm out and bring in Romana too.
Yeah.
So,
which we'll get to that when we get to that. But what a bizarre sequence that was.
What are you doing here?
Regenerating. Do you like it?
And again, I'm biased because I really like Tom Baker. So you guys check my honesty on this. Dogpile me if you have to. But I can't recall another transition sequence. Now, I don't mean the fade dissolve. I'm talking about the scenes afterward where he's trying to figure out, what he's like and looking in the mirror and doing all this stuff and the costume changes. Was there ever anything more dynamic than that between Doctors? Or equal to?
I think some of the later Doctors aped that. McCoy, when he started, did a whole very similar thing, trying on multiple costumes, including the Fourth Doctor outfit.
Right.
They kind of pointed out sometimes, not to the degree that here's a jester outfit, everything else, the French clown.
Yeah.
But like Davison his Doctor was poking through stuff and found the cricketer's uniform.
Right.
I think,
and destroyed the scarf, which was a big symbolic thing, but that's a whole other.
That's a whole new bucket of worms to open up. I know that there was with McGann's Doctor, the Eighth Doctor. when he regenerated. It was, go raid the locker where at the hospital, and he finds a Halloween costume. And I'm sure someone's screaming at me now. I can't remember which famous cowboy character it was, but he looks at everything, including the gun belt, and he sets the gun belt and the gun aside.
Right.
He makes that symbolic gesture of, this is not me. I'll keep the rest of it, but I'm going to set this aside.
Right.
That kind of thing. I'm trying to remember. There's
Yeah,
another.
but everybody else is like Matt Smith, like raids the another hospital clothing room, puts on a professor-looking outfit.
Right.
Yeah.
But nobody really does it to the extent of, like I said, except for McCoy, who did 3 or 4 different outfits. Like Baker pretty much popped right into that travesty.
Right. Right.
Colin Baker.
Right.
But yeah, and again, I think it's because this is the 3rd time we're doing this. What are we doing? I don't know. Play with it.
Yeah, and then this regeneration with the costume changes was very reminiscent to me of the Matt Smith Doctor, where he develops an identity. When Baker pops out of the TARDIS, I kept commenting like, I love this part because he pops out all proud of himself in this jester or the French clown or whatever else, the Viking, and when they say no.
And I could tell you were so disappointed when he didn't stick with the French clown.
Oh no, I don't like clowns, and no, I was very happy for him to get back in there, get another outfit.
And you could see when he's told no, go change. It's not what we're looking for. The sadness, the disappointment that Tom Baker emoted for the Doctor was palpable. And then he comes out dressed as the Doctor, and it's the music hits right, everyone hits right, like, okay, we're in, let's go.
Right.
And it's very reminiscent with the Smith era, where he's trying on ties, he's
including the bow tie.
Yeah, it's cool. Bow ties are cool.
throwing him over his shoulder. He settles in the bow tie as he's delivering the speech. That's going through the history of Doctor Who with the holograms, and he walks through as he tightens the tie and says,
Hello, I'm the Doctor.
That was the moment. The moment for Tom Baker was, I'm here in my scarf and coat and everything else, and as soon as he walks out in that, he's all business. He's ready to go right now.
I love that a lot of people don't get that that's a gag on. He's dressed like Oscar Wilde.
He's more of, as has often been described, John Pertwee's outfitting was dandy, and his outfitting is bohemian, as they describe it. So.
Yeah, which fits this Doctor. And that was the other thing watching this for me was how many moments that I think of as iconic for Tom Baker's Doctor happen in this episode.
Yeah.
The whole, what's the point of being an adult if you can't be childish from time to time?
You're being childish.
Well, of course I am. There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes.
Right.
Or the grin.
Right.
Or the moment when he's talking with the Brigadier and Benton, and they're like, it's impregnable. He's like, I don't like the word impregnable. It reminds me too much of the word unsinkable. What's wrong with unsinkable? Glub, 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 glub.
Right. And then there's also the famous...
Yeah,
that's in
knows,
there.
yep.
The nose touch, that's in there. He establishes his character pretty fast. I mean, I remember one time somebody described how amazing it was that the first season of the original Star Trek was so strong.
Yeah.
Because when you think back on Star Trek and its tropes, you think about, even if you don't realize it, you think about a lot from that first season because it was so well done and it established everything so beautifully. And this Doctor did it in 20 minutes or less. I mean, the whole story is about 2 hours, but even in that first episode, like you said, there's so much going on. It's pretty incredible that within that four episode cycle, he has found his footing and you know who he is, even though he's not even in his environment yet. He's still in Pertwee's environment with Bessie and Unit and Earthbound, but yet he's a completely new character, and you love him for it.
Now, assuming I'm right, and I invariably am, what is the third vital ingredient?
A focusing generator.
Exactly, Brigadier.
Yeah. And he's ready to go at the first it's from the minute one when he sneaks off with his boots. He's like, I'm out.
Right. Yeah, until you've told me that there's something cool and supernatural possibly going on to keep me here for another hour.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
And I really enjoyed it. I mentioned this, as soon as he did it, and it's one of the things that really stands out to me. And unfortunately, it dies off so rapidly in this era of the fourth Doctor. He uses his costume to help him. It's not just the frills that the third Doctor had, or the recorder that maybe helped the second Doctor think or whatever. It's the scarf is actually a piece to help him analyze.
Right.
Like he wipes some oil on it. He uses it to grab things off the floor. He trips a guy with it.
Right.
Yeah. He drags the end of it across that oil spot.
Yeah.
I mean, and the camera focused on that. That wasn't just that was a deliberate I'm testing.
He uses everything he's got, not just as a set piece to like, hey, look at me, this is who I am. It's also, this is what I do. He works it into his problem solving.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, that does die off very quickly.
It's so sad that it does.
Yeah. His costume, as we're just joking about, what are we going to costume as for Dragon Con? His costume in these first few stories, this first season, it's really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And when John Nathan Turner takes over the show, and it kind of started with, I believe his name's Graham Williams. It started with Graham Williams putting the Doctor in, high boots and, buccaneer boots and stuff like that are over the pants and stuff. Mm. This Doctor's costume fit his personality so well that I understand why critics say later on in the John Nathan Turner era, the costume became a costume rather than an outfit.
Right.
Yeah.
This feels like a legitimate outfit that's eccentric, but yet it's real clothes. And I like the combo of it. I think it's sharp.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, and a lot of, I think, of the modern Who costuming is kind of a backlash to whatnot, because, like you said, this is an outfit. It's eccentric, but it's an outfit. Same thing with Pertwee's. It's a little eccentric, but it's an outfit.
Right.
And then Davidson, it's a cricket outfit. Weird, but okay. But then we hit the 6th and 7th, and they're outlandish.
Right.
To the point that, they put Eccleston in a T-shirt and a leather jacket.
Yeah.
As a complete rebuke.
Absolutely simple.
It's like they learned it's like John Nathan Turner learned the wrong lessons from the eccentricities of the previous Doctor's costuming. Like
he turned the wrong things up to 11.
Exactly. Like if you're gonna do Venusian Aikido, then you need to be in like a frilly collar for some reason with frilly cuffs. I mean, you just need to be. It's just something. It all works together.
Now give me that micro, sir.
I have it! Doctor! What else do you think you're doing?
Venusian karate.
Now, the costume that I wasn't thrilled with was Sarah Jane Smith's first outfit, but we're going to ride right past that because it's a stupid footnote in my own mind.
Hat or scarf? You have to pick one.
Oh, you're talking about that white hat in the beginning?
Yeah.
That whole ensemble needs to go in the trash.
No,
I would.
If you have to dress her in one.
Oh, forever?
Yeah.
I'm taking the headscarf all the way.
The headscarf.
Yeah, absolutely. The headscarf all the way.
Well, the headscarf's unique because it also doubles as a towel, right? She was getting ready to serve tea to Kettlewell and taking care of him after his incident. She just reaches up and just, okay, whatever, brushes off her fingers. It's multi-purpose. It's like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy towel.
Yeah. I just love the idea. I love the idea that she's like, I've got to go present myself to this sort of pseudo-fascist group, and I got to go, almost like sell my persona in a way that's a fake persona, so I've got to dress the part. And she decides to go in this kind of vaguely counterculture hippie kind of look. Not quite.
British version of hippie.
British hippie kind of look.
One thing about reform societies, they're never adverse to a bit of free publicity.
And, of course, they don't let her in because they're fascist and horrible.
Yes.
But, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
Speaking of the science fascists, did either of you see the twist coming that our kindly, crazy-haired old scientist was actually the head of the...
No, I did not see that coming. I thought that he sold the idea really well, that he had divorced himself from that organization and their ideas. Yeah. So what about you?
I did not really see it coming the first time I watched it. And then sitting back and watching the clues and stuff, it really didn't present as the twist it was coming. Like he didn't really present as a bad guy acting like a good guy. It really the story sold us on this guy's just a scientist who has his thing taken away from him.
Right.
And then he pops out on stage, and the first thing I said was, "Oh, it looks like Dr. Wily from the Mega Man games."
Yeah, he totally does. He looks like Dr. Wily. It's crazy.
Because now he's the mad scientist that's got the robot.
Yeah. And that hair was like...
It's like Larry Fine got hit with an electric socket.
Yeah, it's a miracle. And it keeps getting more pronounced with each scene. Like they keep finding better hairspray and they keep bringing it out.
Yeah, and they do a really good job, like you said, when we introduce him as the standard befuddled science guy who he's an absolute genius, but he can't tell you where he put down his hamburger.
But I saw the robot.
That's impossible. I gave orders for him to be dismantled.
And it was really interesting to see. You know exactly what they were going for, the dynamics with this scientific group. The symbolism was right on the nose. But the first time you meet them, you got a big thug in the corner is in civilian clothes, and then the next time you meet them, they're in military uniforms with armbands and
never trust anybody in armbands. I'm just all I'm saying.
But for all of the tightness of their outfitting, they apparently didn't have any door locks.
We've got to start somewhere. But there is one thing I'm looking forward to. Professor Kettlerow's robot. It's in here, isn't it?
right
because they're building this top secret robot they're going to use to help take over the country or whatever to start
the big think tank.
Yeah, the big think tank. And yet every door that says authorized personnel only is unlocked and anybody can just go in. It's like,
well, see, because science fascists follow the rules. If the sign says don't enter, they don't enter.
Right.
Oh, okay. So it's very Teutonic in that way.
Either that or they couldn't get funding from Parliament, so door locks were out, robot was in.
Right.
Got to choose.
It's like we could either lock the doors or have an 8-foot killer robot.
Every scientist needs a killer robot.
Yeah, but budgets are budgets.
Yeah.
We had talked at the beginning of Robots as we're watching it about how the effect of the robot walking along, you seeing through his eyes effectively.
Yeah.
And that the greater technique they'd use inside the camera. As a film guy, do you have anything?
I just love the fact that it's all done in camera.
Yeah.
I love the fact that they captured all that when I say on location or on set, and once they got it back to the editing booth, maybe they did some color correction, but that's about it. I love in-camera solutions to visual effects problems, and I know that has inherent limitations, which we're about to talk about, but I still find them charming because as somebody who doesn't have visual effects skills and I don't know how to render 3D objects in a computer and stuff like that, I'm always learning my tricks from those people from 40 years ago. How did I got to lock the camera and then I got to do like a static plate, and then what element do I put in there and how do I put it in there? Because I don't know how to chroma key. How do I trick everything to be in camera? These British guys, that's why, Star Wars, Superman, Raiders of the Lost Ark, all those films in the late 70s, early 80s were being shot over there, not just because of the exchange rate, but also because these guys have been innovating on shoestring budgets for so long.
That when you give them actual money.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the only things that I feel like, you can only take so much money away from something before you really can't get a result, like the Loch Ness Monster, which we'll be talking about at some point in this series, or, Green...
Or that tank.
Or that tank. Let's talk about the tank.
As an idea, forced perspective is like one of the earliest techniques of special effects. And when it's done well, it can work really well.
Right.
The tank did
in
not
this
work.
case.
Okay, so you're right. And to be fair, the special effects guy is on the commentary of the DVD, and he talks about how he admits that he pushed for this technique and it didn't pay off. He owns it. So
if we can show the clip, I don't know if we can.
No, we're showing it right now. It's happening right now.
Yeah. I mean, the idea when you're looking at it, it could have worked. It's just that the toy tank that they chose is so close to the camera and so obviously a plastic toy.
Right.
That it's laughable.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask the question here. We're watching it on Blu-ray, and I watched it on a DVD quality, right? We all could tell on these copies that the tank was obviously a plastic toy. They did their best to put in the tread sounds.
Oh yeah.
And the swivel of the turret and everything else was obviously a toy. Did that same thing apply in 1974 with your television, like 240p resolution?
Good point. I think that on the television, the tube TVs of the 70s, it still would have looked dodgy, but it wouldn't have been as stark. Now, as you said, you can't, when you said 240 P or whatever it was, 240i, whatever it was back then.
Yeah.
I threw a number out because
it's
lower
about
than 720.
Exactly, it's about like that. I mean, even PAL broadcasting in the 90s was about 500 lines, and our broadcasting here was about 400 lines.
Yeah.
So they've always had a little bit of an edge on us. The long and the short of it is that tank would look dodgy no matter what scenario of resolution it was living in, because the Blu-ray is not actually 1080p. It's giving us a 1080p upscaled image, but that image will never be more detail than whatever the broadcasting video was, because they didn't even shoot robot on film. They shot all of it on video because the robot effects outside required all that layering and chroma key and stuff.
When it's picking up people.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it would not have worked also on TV, just for the simple fact it's so close to the camera.
Yes.
If it had been like a little further back, or if they'd actually gotten like a metal toy tank or something, and painted it or something. But it's just the camera is literally like 2 inches from that tank. It's impossible to miss.
Right.
And I feel like that was the turning point in this story, where I don't know what the catalyst was necessarily, like why they made the choice they did with the special effects for that battle sequence. But I feel like that was the turning point when the special effects really just kind of like fell off the cliff, right? Because we got the scaling up of the robot. We can, the chroma key stuff where he's picking up Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane in that shot is obviously a doll.
A doll, because her legs are too small for her body, and they're shaking back and forth.
When he puts her up on the building, she grabs onto obviously a blue screen effect. The cutouts are worse than they were for like the R2D2 flight sequences in.
I'm shocked that
they'd eaten at this point. They'd eaten the ham sandwich and run out of budget.
Right.
Yeah, they couldn't. You're right, and they couldn't even build a mock-up of a chimney with a pipe for her to hold in the blue screen studio.
Right.
It was
she's obviously doing this in front of the screen.
Right. And I love the fact that they're willing to do that. They're like, we don't have any money left, but we're just going to try and make this work.
Yeah, it's part of the charm.
But you're right, it doesn't hold up. And that's too bad. I mean,
and what's really frustrating is when the robot starts shrinking again in that alleyway. Once it gets down to the size that the robot originally was, they could have easily cut and then cut back and have the actual robot standing there, and it wouldn't have been such an obvious chroma key push in.
Yeah, and the robot itself, as we said earlier, the robot costume looks great. It's too bad they couldn't have done like a Terminator thing with it, where they were content to keep it at that size and then just have a pitched battle of some kind. But I guess they wanted the wondrous kind of kaiju moment, the kind of.
Well, they said, when writing this one, it was Terrence Dix that said he was inspired by both iRobot and by King Kong.
Right.
And that's the effect he was going for, which he seems to have nailed with the King Kong aspect, as we saw with the giant robot.
Right.
And then the iRobot with the robot trying to struggle with, okay, do I break that law of robotics by killing people?
Right.
Yeah. The actor really, it's a little hammy, but it's a really good scene when Sarah runs in to save the doctor, saying, "No, you can't kill him. He's a friend of humanity."
You mustn't harm him!
He is an enemy of humanity.
No, he isn't. He's a good man, a friend.
Right.
And he does I don't understand. It's a bit hammy, but he's a robot.
Right.
That's actually a pretty good scene.
Yeah, because they're actually brave enough to put in real sentiment and real expression of sentiment without undercutting it with a snarky Whedonism or something like that, which I know we're not even in that era yet of television. And I some people have criticized that era of television, not just Doctor Who, but television in general back then, and said, oh, television back then was cheesy or it was hokey. I argue, I'm like, no, it wasn't cheesy or hokey. It was authentically sentimental. Like the expressions of emotion were real. They wanted to actually say real things, and maybe that makes certain viewers in the modern world uncomfortable. But I agree with you. I think that's one of the strongest scenes in the whole story.
Yeah,
is her trying to reason with that robot.
Yeah, in the 1974-75 era, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're getting out of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and even part of the 60s where film was treated like a stage play.
Right.
And so they're expositing everything, and doing the whole, very Broadway, King's
naturalism
End.
was not a thing.
Right. So it becomes more natural. But
Right.
again, the budgets haven't caught up. We're not in the Star Wars era yet, where
Right.
you've got money to throw at everything.
Right.
So the shoestring budget keeps the effects and everything, and the settings all at bay. And so, yeah, the characters have to carry it
Right.
based on the writing. And the writing can be, as we'll see later on, the writing can still be crap.
Right.
But the characters can still drive even the worst script forward.
And that's the wrong lesson that entertainment at large has learned. They took the wrong lesson, which was once we have the ability to do great effects, we don't have to put as much effort into the character building anymore and the world building. And that's where we've started to see a disparity. Like I would much rather watch Robot over and over again before I watched a Michael Bay Transformers movie with robots, because there's no character development in those. There's no
Right.
real story.
That's why the ones that really work and stick with us manage to do both.
Right,
That's
right.
one of the things Marvel does real well these
Yeah.
days with the MCU.
That's part of the power. As cheesy as they are, as on the nose as they are, all that kind of stuff, that the villains still resonate because it still has meaning today. And that's really important to
Right.
me,
Yeah.
that kind of aspect of the show.
Yeah, people who think that they know what's best and everybody's going to listen to them, even if they have to threaten blowing up the earth.
Right.
And the Kettlewell was like, well, we can't just kill people. Like, of course we can kill people. They're the wrong people.
Yeah.
We let the right people.
Aren't you forgetting that in science as in morality, the end never justifies the means?
What are we going to do with them?
Kill them, of course.
Oh, no.
They're far too dangerous to us.
You see what I mean, Professor?
I do love that scene where Sarah Jane Smith tries to get into the meeting.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you're not good enough to be in
Yeah.
our group. And she's like, what? And then he gives her all of these really like closed-minded, ignorant reasons why, even though they pride themselves on their scientific minds.
We're logical.
We're logical. She's inferior and she can't come into the group. I was like, wow, like they didn't even try to get around this in the writing. They were just like, and here we go.
Yeah.
And I love her response of, I'll write about you right next to the flat earthers.
Right, yeah.
We've been sadly misrepresented.
Really? Well, we're covering a number of fringe organizations, and I'm sure we'll find a place for you. Somewhere between the flying saucer people and the flat earthers.
There's an elephant in the room that I wanted to bring up because we haven't touched on it in any great detail yet. Harry Sullivan.
He's
In this episode, he's not so bad.
he's okay here, and the reason I groaned when he came on screen is because I have knowledge of what comes next.
Right.
And oh my,
He's not the worst companion. He's not even the worst Baker companion.
right,
But he's not good.
right.
He says a lot of things that are problematic even at the time. He's a bumbler. I mean, even the doctor treats him like a moron.
Right.
And he doesn't do much to counter that.
Right.
And we're going to see when we get to Ark in Space, he's
Right.
responsible for a lot of big problems.
Right.
But in this episode, he has like one job to infiltrate. Well, he has two jobs: keep an eye on the doctor,
Right.
which no one was going to succeed at that.
Right.
And then infiltrate this organization. He halfway gets that, but then still, Bill Nye the Science Nazi shows up and
Right.
clocks him on the head.
Now, how much of that is the writer's fault not knowing what to do with Harry? Because the intention had been, we're going to bring a character named Harry Sullivan into this when the Doctor transitions, because the plan had actually been to go back to a Hartnell-aged guy. And then they found Tom Baker after their desperate search was coming up zero. And suddenly they realized, well, Tom Baker's only 40. He can do all this stuff.
Yeah,
Harry.
Sullivan was supposed to be the young guy who does things.
Yeah, and they didn't need him. So how much of that do you think is the writer's fault? It's not really Ian Marter's fault.
No, he does a superb job with what it's all the writers, because he does the character they write.
Right, right.
And that's a very important distinction to make going forward. Because I had a lot of trouble with this with the Timestamps project as well. When we make criticisms about the characters, it's not a criticism necessarily about the actor, right? Their job is to show up and read lines and to portray as best as possible what's on the script.
Right.
And when I was doing my look at Colin Baker, for example, a lot of people thought when I was being critical of the Sixth Doctor, I was being critical of Colin Baker.
Right.
Because I thought personally in the first season that the Sixth Doctor was rather creepy.
Yeah.
Right. And people were, well, I don't think Colin Baker, who's still alive, would appreciate you calling him creepy. I'm like, I'm not calling Colin Baker creepy. I'm calling the Sixth Doctor creepy.
Right.
He did what he could with what was on the page. This is what came across to me.
Yeah.
So it's not Ian Marter's fault that he has literally nothing to do in this episode,
Right.
this serial. It's what he was written to do.
Yeah.
And we even saw them hanging sort of a lampshade, almost inadvertently, because I think he was supposed to be doing more of the experimenting. But when they build that virus, and the doctor's like, like, good job, like,
we did it.
You
Right.
didn't do anything.
Right.
The doctor's the one who figured that out.
I just wanted to ask because I
Yeah.
know I know that certain people throughout the years have said that Harry was dead weight. That's why he was quickly written off the show. And in Elizabeth Sladen's autobiography, she talks about how it was people assumed that she was upset back then when they brought Harry on because she'd already been on the show for a year or for a season. And they were like, did you bristle at that? And she's like, well, not really. She said, it actually helped as far as transitioning Tom on because Harry was new as well.
Right.
And so Harry and Tom got to pal around for a little while during the first story or two between takes. And I got to sit back and just let them kind of build their rapport. And it wasn't like how it was with John, who was such a domineering personality, the Third Doctor, introducing Elizabeth Sladen to everybody. She got to just kind of sit back and get to know them on her own terms. And it helped everybody out. Yeah. But she said that she and Tom both were rather upset when they let Ian Marter go, when they wrote him out of the show, because their argument was, you're just not writing him well. He's a good actor and he creates good dynamics.
Well, he's a military doctor, so he's got skills that would be useful.
Right.
So yeah, I will agree that as much as I don't care for Harry, it's not the actor. The
Right.
actor did
Right.
fine with what he was given. It's just that what he was given.
Does this story still hold up? Does this really echo what Doctor Who's about?
I think it does because it focuses on a mythological archetype, the robot's journey in his headspace. So that in of itself is one of those great moral dilemmas. Much like, as we'll get to, a Genesis of the Daleks plays with it. That's what makes it a great story, is that it focuses on something that plagues us all as living beings who are sentient. I think it also works because you have, frankly, you have a villain that challenges the Doctor's resources, but how do I put this? You never have to question whether the Doctor is on the right side, because the Doctor's a paragon of virtue. The Doctor is not a jaded Snake Plissken type where the entertainment comes from trying to figure out if he's the good guy or not. I don't know if I'm making sense. Or
You
not.
do,
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, these are definitely villains that would not even feel out of place today.
Right. Yeah, so in that sense, it's rather uncomfortably relevant today. Yeah.
And I have to agree. It's like, I think we were deciding between watch it, skip it, or watch it with these caveats. And I'm like, watch it.
Yeah.
It not only because of your reasons, but because there are, like I said, there are so many iconic Fourth Doctor moments in this episode. You can't miss it. If you're, there are some episodes you can skip. Not this one. This one, you if you're a Whovian, you should watch this episode.
Yeah, and
or story.
Knowing from from past experience, Regeneration episodes are usually very rocky, because we have what we talked about the meme previously, where it's the regeneration cycle for fans. You love the Doctor as the way that the Doctor is. The Doctor regenerates. Oh, this is the worst thing ever. It's the death of Doctor Who. Okay, maybe this one's not so bad. Oh, I can't live without them.
Oh my God, he's the best Doctor ever.
Best Doctor ever. Regeneration. Oh, this is the death of Doctor Who. It's a continual cycle every 3, or in this case 7 years. And so, but this one wasn't rocky. This one was firing on all cylinders right out of the gate. And I don't know if that was because they were doing the co-production between Planet of the Spiders and this one, and it was just the same team, just go, and they had no chance to stop and catch their breath.
It wasn't a season break the way.
Yeah,
it was, but not like
the way it is now, where like they do the regeneration, throw the new actor in there, and then walk away for 18 months, and then come back again.
Right.
This is definitely one that if you're trying to get the greatest hits of Who mythology, this is it. Yeah.
So watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
Watch it.
Honestly, they're bound to find us.
Anyone who finds us will be destroyed.
Why? What's the point of more killing?
I see our little problem seems to have grown. Where's Sarah?
Oh, she's safe enough, Doc. I gave it a blast with the disintegrator gun. It left her up on the roof.